This is a fascinating story, and I don't want to ruin it for those of you who don't know it, but I just want to give some thoughts, especially to the younger folks here, about what Kevin is about to talk about. Okay, so technology. What is it? It's electronics sometimes, but not necessarily. It's advanced materials and new physics and blah blah blah, but not necessarily, right? We've all seen the cartoon. The first Stone Age caveman who carved the first Stone Age wheel. He carved that first Stone Age wheel out of Stone Age stone, and it led us out of the Stone Age, right? So technology isn't materials or necessarily any kind of whiz bang. It's about vision. It's about seeing a wheel in a rock and wondering what you could do with it. So Kevin's story is about vision on multiple levels, right? So on one hand, it's about bringing vision, like Mark 1 Mod 0 eyeball vision, potentially to tens of millions of people who don't have enough of it. And there I ruin the surprise, but enabling those people to live infinitely happy and more productive lives. But it's also about another kind of vision, about looking at something awkward and heavy and wondering, hey, what if that were smooth and round? Where would that take me? Right? So that's a way of thinking that not all of us have, but it's a way of thinking that all of us could have. And it's pretty cool. So Kevin, thanks for coming to talk to us, and I think we're all excited to hear your story. Floor is yours, sir.
Great, thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Kevin White. Short bio. So I was enlisted Navy submariner for a couple years, machinist mate. Went to the Naval Academy, went to NAPS with John Stammer, a few others that are out there. Class of '92, went Marine Corps. Finished off my 17 years. More, 3 years enlisted, 17 years in the Marine Corps, and retired back in 2009. But my story actually, for what I'm doing post-Marine Corps, started in 2005. So I was the director of humanitarian assistance programs at UCOM, and in that capacity, Africa or Eastern Europe, I would liaise with the unit and the embassy and the defense attaché, et cetera, and come up with a humanitarian program that we could do. And the first one that I got to travel to was in Morocco, and it was a hospital and an engineering. They built a school, et cetera, in Agadir, Morocco. And they had also set up donated eyeglass distribution. And as a lifelong wearer of eyeglasses, I was kind of interested in that. So I went down to check it out. And to be honest, I was pretty disappointed in the inefficiencies of a system like that. So donated eyeglasses, you guys probably are familiar with it, but no one gets 20/20 in both eyes. Because it's whatever the person had before. And a lot of times people were picking the frame that they liked as opposed to the prescription that they needed. And, I didn't know this at the time, but that observation set the course basically for the next 15 years plus of my life. So I came back to UConn, back to Stuttgart, and I said, there's got to be a better way. I'm looking for like snap-in eyeglasses, optometrist lens, and make a nice pair of eyeglasses. Well, that did not exist in 2005. But what did exist were these sexy bad boys right here. So these are called ad specs. And what happens is you've got this silicone oil that you turn this dial and it changes the focal length of this lens. So by changing that shape, you're basically creating a -6 diopters to a +6, moves that focal point very naturally. So the Professor Silver that invented them had invented them for the developing world to replace the optometrist, or to kind of fill that gap that optometrists could not fill. But what I saw, of course, was an ability to lower that educational threshold so that we could even have Marines delivering eyeglasses, because it doesn't take much to put someone in the right parameters to dial their own prescription. It's like handing a pair of binoculars to a 5-year-old. Very intuitive. They just turn the dial, it goes clear, and they can see it. You don't need to tell them much instruction. I was extremely successful. Delivered about 30 to 40,000 pairs of these suckers. And when I retired, like I said, in 2009, I started a charity kind of as a hobby. So I was doing the Beltway defense contractor thing, had this charity to deliver these eyeglasses. And every year I would go to Liberia or Morocco or Malawi, et cetera, Rwanda, delivering eyeglasses. But I looked at the data a couple of years ago from Malawi. We gave away 1,000 pairs of them, but only one 26-year-old was wearing them. And you can see why. I mean, someone like John Stammer could probably pull this off, but for the most of us, it's pretty limiting. So I thought there's got to be a better way. So I did a gap analysis. So on one side, you've got conventional eyeglasses that take an optometrist or an ophthalmic nurse to deliver, and on the other side, you've got ad specs. You've got these fluid-filled eyeglasses. 2009 to 2013, I learned more about the problem. So 2.5 billion people need but have no access to eyeglasses. And in the US, for instance, we have one optometrist for every 8,000 people. But in the developing world, that number is closer to 1 to 1 million. So in order to solve this, it's a distribution problem. It's absolutely the ability to kind of task shift, to lower that educational threshold so that others can deliver this echelon of care. So what I came up with had to be as simple as the ad spec, but end with a pair of eyeglasses. So to Jason's point, technology, this is about as simple as it gets. So what you have here is a lens bar, and I don't know if this will work, but so there's -6 diopters, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's +6. So it changes power, and you see those numbers, a blue 6 all the way down to a red 1. All of those numbers represent a quarter diopter and change of the diopter. So a diopter is basically the movement of that focal point as it moves back and forth across your retina. The more myopic you are, the higher degree of filament you have, the more, and so, well, I won't get into the details, but and so you limit the patient to this very small viewing aperture, and they simply put it on and turn a dial as they're looking at an eye chart. And if they dialed in a red 1 and a green 5, you'd get the red 1 left, and you get the green 5 right. You pop the lens out of the bag. You grab the lens that they belong into. You pop the lens out. These are my readers, so I don't want to pop it, but then the lens just pops right out, and then you pop in the new lens, and you created a pair of eyeglasses in about 10 minutes. So it's 3 hours to learn how to do it, 10 minutes to deliver these eyeglasses. So it was very natural, of course, that I developed all of this underneath the umbrella of Global Vision 2020, which was a 501c3. This status, of course, allowed me to get a lot of free help. So Poly1 is the second largest plastics manufacturer in the world. When I had this design, it was on a piece of paper, and I needed to get it into CAD, I needed to get it 3D printed, I needed the lenses CNC'd, all of that stuff. So through my network of people after the Marine Corps, I knew a lot of people in that industry. So Poly1, a friend of mine, had just joined their C-suite, and I called him up and said, hey, I need some help. They had just bought a design firm in Kansas City, or doesn't matter, in Kansas. And they took me on as a collaboration for a cause. I was the first and only winner of collaboration for a cause with this firm. So they took my design and moved it all the way through. Since then, they've helped me go to injection molding. Their patent office did the majority of my patent work. Johns Hopkins, so I was a student at Johns Hopkins. I got my MBA at Johns Hopkins. Research section said, hey, check out what I've got. He said, what do you need? I said, a clinical study. He said, you got it. So we've done a clinical trial. So all of this, of course, was great because it was under the 501c3, but now I'm in this sort of weird spot. So the Global Vision 2020 was made to deliver eyeglasses to folks at the pointy end. And people like to give money, and you can win grants to do things like that, to apply distribution. But if you're a product manufacturer, then that's not necessarily as sitting on that same side. That's much more in the realm of a for-profit company. So we're straddling the fence, of course, and as most of you guys know, that's a relatively uncomfortable position to be. So anyway, so as a deliverer of services, finding grants is relatively simple, but as a product developer, not so much. And I really split my focus. Focused on fundraising to do the delivery of eyeglasses, but also product sales, trying to build customer base, trying to find those hospitals, those ministries of defense, or excuse me, ministries of transportation, education, health, et cetera, to become customers. I also had to find partners to do that distribution. I applied to USAID several times and got turned down because I didn't look like a distributor. I looked like a manufacturer. So I used my Johns Hopkins connection, went to CCP. It's the Center for Communications Projects. I explained Johns Hopkins CCP is essentially like a Booz Allen Hamilton for USAID. So USAID puts out an RFP, CCP and a few other companies bid that and put in a proposal and win lots and lots of them. So they're a partner. So with Georgetown University Business School also has a social development, a social entrepreneur side. So we've got projects slated for Tanzania and Kenya, and we're also in the top 100 for 100 and change MacArthur $100 million grant. So that hopefully will come out. Well, it's been pushed because of COVID, like everything. So sometime next year, we'll find out. So we're still, as I said, we're still into that not-for-profit, but the question I'm wrestling with now, and I'm hoping maybe some questions and answers we can talk about, is how does it make sense to transition to a social enterprise or as a for-profit company? Now, the nice thing is that we've done product development, we've done all the R&D, we've done clinical trials, field trials, our proof of concept, we've got that initial customer base, et cetera. So we've done a lot more as a not-for-profit than a startup for-profit company would do. But the issue, of course, is as always, it's funding. Because it's tough, if not impossible, to ask for donations when that donation is not necessarily going directly to the needs of the people that need eyeglasses. Implementing a sales campaign in East Africa isn't something that the Bill Gates Foundation is really that jazzed about. They just want to buy product and give it to the people that are going to apply it. But I'm also cognizant of the fact, of course, that we have our roots and our initial start firmly in the not-for-profit space. So what I mean by that is, we've gotten lots and lots of help to develop this product for the use at the base of the pyramid. The good news is there's not a lot of application for this at the top of the pyramid, so that leaves us firmly in the helping other people. So that initial investment, of course, it was done with the intent to do good in the world. So this transition has to be with the right partners, that care about that double bottom line, the financial performance and the social impact, which is where I am right now. I'm on that precipice of transition. So any thoughts that anyone has on how to make that jump from the not-for-profit space into a for-profit space, finding those right sort of investors, and even doesn't make sense. If we can continue to grow very slowly as a not-for-profit, then that's fine. I'm fine with that too. Obviously, I'm not in this, to buy a Tesla. I'm in this to help solve a massive problem of the world. I wore glasses my whole life. I would not have been at the Naval Academy without them. My two sons both wear eyeglasses. They would not be doing the things that they're doing if it were not for eyeglasses. They've been around for 500 years, 700 years really, yet 2.5 billion people just cannot get them. Lastly, I know that many of you guys volunteer your time and donate your cash to charities and service organizations. And as all Naval Academy grads know, the mission of the Naval Academy, and probably many other schools, is to produce graduates that are ready to assume the highest responsibility of command, citizenship. But the good news is the pay absolutely sucks. But it's such necessary work. So once you guys have made it, once you have achieved whatever it is that you've set out to achieve, be that the command at the level that you want to command, that bank account's where you want it, I would challenge you, I challenge myself as well, to consider leadership as citizens in the not-for-profit and the social enterprise space. Because none of us get out of this thing alive. Life is, when it's done, we're done. And we don't necessarily look back and go, I died with the mostest. But it's the things that might measure our success, and they differ with age. How we measure that success differs with age. So business culture is rightfully concerned about adding shareholder value, no doubt at all. Not-for-profit and civic organizations are concerned with adding value to humanity. So time spent in this organization doesn't necessarily feed your bank account, but it does feed your character. So that's kind of the wave tops of all of this. So I'm open to any questions, advice, thoughts you guys might have. Thanks a lot for listening. These are the glasses, by the way. Yeah, these are them. And they also come in cool sunglasses. Shades. So they're all the same frame. You just have a different set of lenses for every power.
Kevin, there's something that I don't believe you mentioned, but I think it's super relevant. How much do they cost to deliver?
So it's about $3 per person to deliver a pair of prescription eyeglasses. Yeah.
I mean, that's insanely low. That's really something. I'm burning to ask a technical question if
bring
you indulge me. So you mentioned additive manufacturing, the way that you guys are producing those things.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about the iteration cycle. Like, were you guys able to get through a whole bunch of different sorts of trials and super fast because you're using additive manufacturing?
Yeah, no, exactly right. We did. There's a company. I can get the name for you if you want it, but I think it's in Minnesota. They had super high density, high detail 3D printing. So we had our initial CAD design, we 3D printed it. I had some physicists that I knew at the University of Oxford that made the lenses for me and CNC'd them. Just went through all of those different processes very, very rapidly using 3D printing and then CNCing. So it really expedited the process. Absolutely. Couldn't have done it without it.
Do you own the technology to this?
I do, yes. So I own the patent. Now, okay, so I have put the patent in the not-for-profit. So I did that so that I could get all of that free help. Now, all the licensing and stuff, that's mine, but that's not necessarily relevant. But moving it to a for-profit, there's lots and lots and lots of background to this, and there's a business plan and all that, if anyone's interested. But essentially, the not-for-profit would be a 10% owner of any for-profit company that we would make based on its ownership of my patent that I gifted to the not-for-profit.
Right. Well, I mean, one way to structure it is just a licensing agreement from the nonprofit to the for-profit.
Yep.
And you can do that with minimum royalties, or you can do that with a set royalty. But I think that really what you have is you have a working plan, you have a market, you have everything.
Yep.
So it just seems like setting up a separate company to get investors. And then if you can tell the company that you have an exclusive license from the owner, and then you can kind of prove to investors, how this concept works. It's just a matter of finding the right investors.
Right.
Hey, so I was just kind of thinking about some creative ways to get some funding. And I always remember whenever I was in high school, I would go on mission trips. And a lot of those mission trips were for a purpose, building a bridge, doing something, this or that. And it's like you had mentioned, if a Marine can do this, I'm sure that a high school kid can do it. So my question to you is have you considered maybe partnering up with some religious organizations that conduct these mission trips to third world countries, et cetera, and making those mission trips, part of your mission, and the fundraising for these trips that they're going to be doing anyways to pay for the actual travel could also go towards these glasses at cost. Because I mean, grabbing a grand, like a $1,000 sounds like it would deliver about 250 to 350 glasses. And most of the churches that I've ever been a part of, raising a grand is, Yeah,
they do it like that. No.
Yeah, that's it. That's pretty simple.
You're 100% on the track that I was on when we first started. We actually have a lead guy who does our faith-based outreach programs. He's a pastor. We've got we've got the Mennonites. Lots and lots of Canadian churches are buying these kits already. We have a few mission-based hospitals that are buying these kits. So you're right. I think about 30 to 50% of healthcare in Africa is run by faith-based organizations, and we absolutely have to spend time on those. So we have one guy who is just a pastor, so he speaks the same, talks the talk with them. So he reaches out to Muslim groups in Lebanon, and he's gotten we have some people in different in Iraq doing these that through the Mennonites and so on. So yeah, I 100% agree that finding those sort of organizations that are very focused on providing that outreach is important.
Kevin, I'm going to pile on to what John said. I think for-profit companies can solve a lot of problems, and you definitely have everything to set up a for-profit company, and licensing a license from the nonprofit with a small royalty to pay, for development costs or whatever. It's a great idea. In 2000, you said something that caught my attention. You said, corporations are supposed to return shareholder value. Not according to the Business Roundtable of 181 CEOs in 2019, where they said it is not the shareholder, it is the stakeholders that we are responsible to. And one of those stakeholders is society and world problems. And so those 181 CEOs took a stand to say, we are here to solve world problems, and how each one of them does it is different. And that was signed off and published, and they've been doing that since the early 70s. So this superseded the responsibility of a corporate CEO to deliver shareholder value at the cost of everything else.
Right.
And so I would say that you are primed right now, and there's a lot of great people here who would help you put together a pitch deck, get out in front of the right investors, set up a B corporation perhaps with social responsibility and social purpose, and get out and find customers who are going to pay you $6 for a pair of glasses and your cost is $3, you make a 50% margin. Mm-hmm. There's everything here for you to make this happen in the next 6 months, 2020, and then have a real running business in 2021.
That's the plan. It's great to know. Thank you very much.
I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm just, it seems to me that if you put a kiosk, let's forget COVID for a second, right? If you put a kiosk in a shopping mall, right, where you could deliver a pair of, functioning prescription eyeglasses in 5 minutes for $10, you guys would be printing money. I mean, solving the world vision problem, absolutely. And maybe that just funds the work in Africa, but oh my God, you could make a lot of money.
So full disclosure, I went to see the American Optometry Association. They're a lobbyist organization for optometrists. And a lobbyist friend of mine got me a meeting with them. Before I even sat down, the first question was, "You're not using this in the United States, are you?" I'm like, "No." And they said, "Okay, sit down. Would you like some water?"
Rent seekers.